issue has nothing to do, it had nothing to do with my being Jewish. I was sort of just a cartoonish patriot of America. I thought America can do no wrong. And when I woke up one morning on March 24th, 1999, and I found out that America was bombing Europe on behalf of Muslims, I mean, I was just a comedian and an actress. I didn't know very much, okay, but I knew enough that something isn't right, right there. And so I started writing about this issue. And my first article, I mean, the war had already started, so I couldn't hope to prevent it. But I wanted to at least spread the word to my fellow Americans that there's something terribly wrong with this. And the first article was really saying, you can't call this a Holocaust, you can't call everything a Holocaust. These are just two ethnic groups who have been killing each other for centuries, and it's nothing like the Holocaust. Well, the more I looked into what really happened, the more I looked into the history, it got uglier and uglier, and it wasn't just two equivalent bad people trying to kill each other. One emerged distinctly as the victim of the other. And not just, I didn't just find out that Serbs were actually the victims of Albanians, I found out that Serbs were the victims of Bosnian Muslims and of Croatians and of Western policy. And it just every day for the past 8 years, literally every day, every rock I look under, I find something else that makes it even more horrible than I thought. So where I come in, where my role comes in, is that I seem to be just about the only American jourналist of any prominence. Well, Serge, he's just a Serb, so you can't listen to anything he writes, okay? but in terms of a non-Serbian American, I seem to be the only one who is just pounding on this issue. I'm the only one who is writing about this. And the reason I do is that I recognize that it's because everything has been, the future of this issue has been defaulted to, like Jim said, a handful of bureaucrats in America who are simply, they have a vested interest in things turning. They were paid by Albanian lobby for decades. And everyone else, it's not that they agree with them, the rest of the country, it's not that they agree with them, they just don't have any idea about it. They're not paying any attention to it. They don't know anything. And when they read my articles, they're shocked and appalled. They can't believe that this has been happening. They can't believe that we are siding with Islam against European Christians. And they start to ask, what can I do? You know, what book can you recommend to me so I can have some history of this? And it's because this has been happening in the shadows, and there's no public attention to this, that the politicians, that the 5 politicians are able to do whatever they want to do with this policy. So that's my job. It's to shine a public light on what's happening, because if most Americans cared or understood or knew, if someone just turned on the switch, if they knew what was going on, they would never let this happen. And politicians aren't going to change their course unless they are shamed publicly, which means media. And unfortunately, I'm one of very few media who are trying to shame them out of this policy. And I think, I also wanted to say that the Jewish aspect, the Albanians, when they started to run into some roadblocks because of the efforts of the American Council for Kosovo, and because there's inevitable delays in what they're asking for, because what they're asking for is monstrous anyway. But they started a new round of targeting the Jewish community. They have been going, the Albanian lobby has been going into synagogues, into Jewish centers, and they have been placing public relations, propaganda articles into Jewish newspapers across the country. This is very recent. Just a few months ago, they started with this again. And I read such a piece in the New York Jewish Week. So of course I went crazy, and I called the editor, and I said that you need an opposite piece. You need some balance to what was being presented there, because basically the Albanians knew that they tricked the Jews the first time into helping their cause. So now that they were running into problems, they thought let's trick the Jews again into, you know, they've been saying, they come up with this handy little fact that there are more, Albania was the only country where there were more Jews by the end of the World War II than before. You know, they managed to put it into this cute little box, you know, and they've been selling it in the form of documentaries, in the form of articles, and the truth is actually not so pretty. But Jews have been buying, they bought into it before, they might buy into it again. So I immediately wrote an article in opposition to that article explaining what actually happened. And so any hope, I think with the New York Jewish Week, it's the largest Jewish circulation newspaper in the country. I don't normally write for them, but I did on that occasion. And I think it did a lot to stop any thoughts that the Jews might have had to once again help the Albanians with carving out a Muslim state. It's pathetic that an article, an opposing article was needed, considering that we are living in a post-9/11 context, and even I think Jews should be figuring out by now, American Jews should be figuring out by now that you don't help the Muslim side against the Christian side. But apparently it's not that simple for some people, so I had to write that article, and I think it did a lot to stop any consideration for once again being the dupes of the Muslim Albanians.
Thank you, Julie. As someone who does a lot of speaking around the United States from one coast to another, including many Jewish congregations, I have some bad news for the Jews in Israel, that your co-religionists in the United States are Americanized in that they are not mindful of history. In fact, they are historical amnesiacs to only a little bit lesser extent than the rest of the Americans, because for most of the Americans, the last event in history they can remember is what? Woodstock. And maybe for the Jewish community it's the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And the extent to which the postmodern, post-national, post-religious, globalist mindset has come to dominate the elite opinion on both sides of the Atlantic, I'm afraid it is also manifest in the Jewish American community in the way that may become dangerous for Israel. And this is not a pretty thing to say, but it is important to say so, that the special relationship between the United States and Israel may one day be threatened also by the loss of pride in Israel's existence and Israel's founding assumptions by American Jews who will become ashamed of ethno-religious, atavistic, tribal roots of identity, because we should all hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and celebrate common heritage of democracy, human rights, and free markets as the only defining characteristics of each and every society. I will now ask the only non-ethnic in this panel, because here we have a Serb, a Greek, and a Jew, which sounds like a bit